academic year usually commences in July or August, but for instance, in case of KTU, we usually had two intakes in a year, but it is more. So the point here is it is more flexible, and it is as a PhD student you should expect to be registered for a minimum of 3 years. So you should always be aware that some universities they have an upper age limit. For instance, after 5 years of registration, they may ask you to re-register. Okay, so typically every PhD is minimum for 3 years of time. Of course, it is flexible. It depends on how you achieve your objectives. So it is, but most of the universities for a PhD program they ask you to re-register after 5 years of time. So I hope I'm audible because I'm sharing my screen. I cannot see the messages. I hope I'm audible, right?
Yes, ma'am, it is
Hello.
audible. But the slide,
Okay.
ma'am, it is audible now.
Can you?
Now
Okay.
the
Okay. Can you
slides are
see
not
this?
playing. Okay.
Okay. Fine.
We can see the
Now.
slide. Now it is not played.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Fine. Yeah. Yeah. Fine. Okay, so this is a course structure we mentioned. So it is a three-tiered system. So you have decided where to do PhD, and you should be aware of how this PhD thing goes. So initially set your mind for 3 years, and only then you may even complete by 4 or 5 years. And usually everybody expects you to finish by 5 years. So they have a re-registration process after 5 years. Okay. Now, when you go into an institution, you can be either a full-time scholar, you can be a full-time QIP scholar, you can be an external registrant, that is part-time scholar, and you can be an internal registrant. So for this, I have referred the regulations by the National Institute of Technology, Karnataka. So, are you backed up by a funding during your PhD? Okay, so for a full-time student, you will have an institute fellowship. For instance, I did my full-time PhD in NITK Suratkar. So, for the entire period, I had the NITK stipend because I had gone through a selection process at NIT. They had a test, they had an interview, and only those who pass all that would be enrolled for a PhD there. Okay, so automatically you get the institute fellowship plus all the contingency amounts of the institute. Now, if you are a full-time QIP scholar, you get the AICT QIP fellowship for 3 years. So I think it was revised lately. I'm not sure. So if you are an external registrant, for instance, many of us do part-time PhD. So for a part-time scholar, you're paid by the college in which you're working, and but you do PhD in, say for instance, KT. Okay, and you can be also working as a scholar with no fellowship at all. Okay, and you can be a project staff. For instance, if you approach a professor who has a project already, so he may take you as JRF, a junior research fellow, with a stipend from the project, and in the project you register for a PhD. So that is also possible, in which you get the fellowship from the project. So that is another set of student type for PhD. Okay, so mostly in our case, for most of the faculty members working under KTU, we are all part-time scholars. Okay. Now, for a PhD program, I'm talking about a full-time PhD program, especially for the National Institute of Technologies. You should have an average cumulative grade point of 6.5 on a 0 to 10 grading scale, and you must have also passed GATE, UGC, etc. To get into a PhD in a institute of national repute. Now, in case of KTU, what I understood is KTU has an exam. So if you pass the exam, if you pass the interview, they consider you for the PhD. Now, if you also have GATE or if you have a UGC net, they don't have to. They just have to apply. I understand. So this having a GATE score is always an add-on for a PhD program. Okay. Now, how this whole thing runs when you, so now you have joined, say you have joined for a PhD program. So in a PhD program, we have a coursework and then an evaluation of the coursework. And in the coursework, one important thing which you study is research methodology. And then after the coursework and after the evaluation of the coursework, we go for the research proposal submission. So research proposal is the idea of the research which you're planning to do. Okay, so the research proposal would be submitted by the scholar to the panel. So the panel is called doctoral committee in KTU. The panel is called the Department Progress Assessment Committee in case of NIT. So it is known by various names in different universities. So in KTU, it's called the Doctoral Committee. So for instance, when you enroll for a PhD in KTU, first itself, they form a doctoral committee for you. And then after that, you enroll for the coursework, you finish your coursework, then you come up with a proposal. That is, you're going to do this and this particular area, you're going to do this particular problem. And this is the proposed experimental methodology. So that is called a proposal. So that I think proposal writing is another dedicated session which can go on for an hour. So you go for a proposal submission and the proposal is assessed by the doctoral committee, and then they say, okay, you can work on this particular problem. And then you start your research work, and during the research work, you give periodic progress seminars. So research progress seminars, which are also attended by the doctoral committee. So they give you recommendations for improvement. And then finally, when the criteria is met, for instance, in KTU, you should have one SCI index paper in which you are the first author. Review papers are not accepted for the award of a PhD, but research papers, SCI indexed is accepted, and you should have maybe one or two conferences to be on the safer side. So one SCI index paper is the minimum requirement. Again, it depends on the guide. Whether you should have 1 or 10. Okay, so but for the university, they'll have a requirement. So when you have met those requirements, when you have completed all your objectives, you can submit your pre-synopsis. You can submit your synopsis. Also, you should give a pre-synopsis seminar, and then the synopsis would be evaluated. And then the committee would again recommend that you can submit your thesis. So then you submit your thesis. The thesis will be evaluated by foreign experts and Indian experts, and the doctoral committee, of course. And then you have the final viva voce. So this is the program structure. You begin with the coursework, you end with the final PhD defense. Okay. Now, I'll move on to the next one. So this is I think that would be more relevant. Okay. Now the fee structure for a normal PhD program. So this is the fee structure which was there for the NITK. So roughly for each semester, you pay around something around 20,000 rupees as tuition fee, etc. Now in case of KTU, the KTU component is 4,000 rupees and the institute component is 6,000 rupees. Plus you have extra fees which is collected by the institute, which is as per the institute norms. So roughly around something equal to 20,000 or less than 20,000 comes for each semester. And say you finish it in 3 years. So I think it is that counts for the fee structure of a PhD program. Okay. Now coming to the most important part, choosing a research guide. Okay. Now this is the most important part of your PhD program. Now there are a lot of cartoons which actually say the condition of a scholar and a research scholar and a research supervisor. Okay. Now because whenever you choose a research supervisor, the communication between you and the research supervisor is very important, because what the research guide would try to convey is not what you would perceive, etc. Okay, and yeah, so there is always a very looped communication between the supervisor and the student. Okay, now choosing a research supervisor, how I would share how I found my research supervisor. For instance, initially, when if you have to, if you're interested in some particular area, so you have also decided where you would do based on all the criteria. Okay, and then you see the website of, say for instance, a college you have in mind. You see the department website and you see which all professors work in that area, and it's always good to select professors who have had recent publications in that area in which you're looking for. And then I think you can always leave an email to all the professors whom you would be interested to work with, and the email should be highly formal, and it's good to have a brief research proposal attached to the email. So this is what I did for my admission in NITK. I wrote an email to say five professors in the Department of Chemical Engineering with a brief research proposal. Okay, so I didn't get any reply, obviously, because it was an NIT. Okay, but anyway, when they called for an interview, when I cleared the test and they called for an interview, then I understood that my email has been noticed by those five people, and they had that in mind. At least two of them had that in mind. Okay, this girl had sent me an email and she had a proposal. Okay, so that is one way to catch their attention and to have them have you in their mind. Okay, so always you're always open to write an email to the professors whom you would like to work with, and with the research proposal it is very well and good. Okay, and then you go for all the interview process and all that, and it will always have a favorable impact for you to work under them. Okay, because it's your requirement. So always understand, PhD is your sole requirement. Professors, they always have a good job, they are well settled and all that, and it's your requirement, so you have to work that extra hour to get to that. Okay, so you can always write an email to approach a research supervisor whom you would like to work with. So that is how you may select a research professor. So when you select a research professor, always have a look at his profile, at his publications especially, and see if he has had recent publications in that area, or at least in a related area. If they have related publications, it's obviously an advantage for you in the long run. Okay, so always choose a guide based on all this. Now, how to choose a research topic? So all these are more than 1 hour session. So I'm just brushing through all these topics. So now you have taken a research guide now to, and you have also had some idea on which area you would like to work on. Okay, for instance, now you have to come to that research topic. Okay, now for me personally, I wanted to work with nanotechnology. So that was my, as a postgraduate student, that was my only idea which I had. Okay, nanotechnology. Okay, so I followed step 1 given here. So nanotechnology was a topic which was there in my mind, and I checked on my strengths. I was a biotechnologist. So I wanted to work on nanotechnology, and I was a biotechnologist. So what I did was I did some preliminary research online. Okay, so you can, Google is your best friend in that case. Okay, so you first Google nanotechnology, recent research advancements, or something like that, and you get a lot of new things which you should read. So these are all homeworks before you do a PhD. So you read all the search results which come in that particular topic which you have given. Now, the second thing which you have to do is, from all that you have read, you have to find an interesting aspect of that topic. For instance, I searched on nanotechnology. Then I understood that nanoparticles are produced using microorganisms or using plants. So, and I also got many results. So this was some interesting aspect, that plants from microorganisms, that these can be synthesized. That was something which amused me. And also I had my cousin who was working in Canada on such a topic. So there were, I could relate my topic to people whom I like, to the to things I was familiar with. And also I found that these results were recent, 2020 results, recent hits were there. So all that made me interested towards the topic. So initially you choose a topic, read whatever you can online about the topic, and find out something very interesting about the topic which you can always relate to. Okay. Now, next thing which you have to do is you have to ask a lot of questions about that topic. For instance, how is that possible? Why is that possible? What could be the reason, etc. Okay. For instance, I don't know how much you can relate to my examples because I am a biotechnologist. Okay. So for but I think I can do justice to only those examples. Okay. So I said nanotechnology was the topic. Then I found plants can be used for producing nanoparticles. So I found it very interesting. Okay. Then I started asking questions. Which plant can be used? Why it can be used? What are the conditions required? So I had a lot of questions in my mind about the topic. And the fourth thing which I do is I try to answer those questions. To answer those questions, you should definitely read some basic research papers. So when you, so I, for instance, I asked, okay, how can I use plants for producing nanoparticles? So I had a lot of answers which would take me more than a sentence to answer, which was quite complex, but it was focused as well. So then I understood, okay, my questions are relevant. It has answers which are focused as well as complex. So then I start evaluating your questions. So I have got some answers also for the questions, and then I evaluate whether my answers are apt. Okay, because my answers are little complicated, my answers are little focused, but then I evaluate, and when I evaluate, I find that okay, this is good enough. And then if you are satisfied, you have a research question with you. You have a research topic with you. Okay, so this is a very huge brainstorming process. So you have to spend lot of hours because when you join for a PhD, you struggle hard to find a research topic which would be interesting as well as competitive. Okay, so in this regard, what I would advise a researcher is that don't be too ambitious when you go for research topics. Okay, for instance, I was always interested in doing research related to pollution, to reduce pollution. So I used to go with all crazy ideas to my research guide, who used to always send me back saying it is, he used to even make fun of me. So because then later on, now when I am a research supervisor, I understand why he sent me back is because I was too ambitious. If I would have done those research topics, I would have never finished my PhD, I feel. So your research topic should not be too ambitious. You should be ambitious, but it should not be too ambitious. It should be achievable. So for that, you should set smart goals which are specific, measurable, attainable, and time bound. Okay, and it should be relevant as well. You have to set your objectives such as they are very smart. Okay, so then you have a research question. Now you have a guide, you have a research question, and you are quite satisfied with the research question. The Now your next aim is to make your guide okay about the research topic. So for that, what I have done for, in my cases, I used to prepare the presentations, PowerPoint presentations about the topic and go to my supervisor. So then I used to explain, sir, This is a topic which I found. These are some of the things which we could do. And then, sir, please go read, give a read through. So I used to give multiple presentations to my research supervisor, and then he used to have his share of questions. So he used to ask me, what are the facilities which you would need if you are pursuing this question? So then I would think of those in that line. So then you will have a realistic idea about your research topic, and by the end of all these brainstorming sessions, you would be pretty confident about your research topic. So that is very important part of research, because it is the first step. Here, if you go wrong, you'll always have multiple struggles during your journey in research. So initially, when you set a research topic, when you set your objectives, take some time, read a lot, and then ask a lot of questions, have real serious discussions. So I would recommend you to prepare PowerPoint presentations for discussions with your guide. Sit with the guide and then decide on the topic. Okay, and always refer to recent research papers when you set your objectives. Okay, recent, at least in only the past 2 years, not more than that. Okay, recent research papers should be referred. Okay, so now you have the research question, your guide is also happy with your objectives, and then you can, so now this I'm keeping my cursor here. So the definition of the problem is quite completed. You have already selected the topic for research. So this you can always do during your coursework time. You can take the whole of your coursework period for defining the research topic and to do some preliminary research on that topic to see whether it will work. So that should also be done. So basic experiments to during my coursework time to confirm whether the topic which I have selected would even work. So just have some idea that, okay, it would work. So anything can go wrong anywhere. So just have some idea that, okay, it would work. So along with definition of the problem, you can always have some set of preliminary studies to ensure that something will work out. So that is defining the problem, and then you do a detailed literature survey. So you collect, go back to the past 10 years, collect the papers. So I would recommend you to collect hard copies of the paper. So now we have laptops, we have all the soft copies, but personally I feel it would not work. Have hard copies of the papers, file it. So I used to have this huge box file. Even now I have, and I treat it as my big asset, because I took, I think, around 2 days to even take printout of that, arrange them year wise, topic wise. So I used to segregate those papers topic wise. For each objective, I used to have a set of papers, and for each set I used to arrange it year wise. I used to stick sticky notes in that and maintain the box file. So that is always your library. So have a very systematic approach in your review of literature also. And once you do all this, your guide is obviously happy. See, one thing which you should always remember is, when people see you are systematic, automatically a lot of goodwill from them comes to you. Okay, and for PhD, goodwill is very, very important. Goodwill from your guide, goodwill from your co-researchers is very important. So when they see you're systematic, when they see you're burning the midnight lamp, definitely they'll also try to help you. The lab assistants will try to help you. Your colleagues will try to help you. So when they see you're really putting in your best in each and every step, a lot of things come easily to you, especially the goodwill. So for review of literature, I would recommend that you all have hard copies of the papers arranged year wise, topic wise in a neatly labeled box file. Okay, so now you have all the tools. So when we had started, we had told ideas, tools. So ideas are ready, tools are ready. Now you start to work. So all these are the carrying out the research part. So you do the experiments in a well planned way, and you interpret the results, and then maybe you'll have to repeat the results. So all that comes in the process. So you should also concentrate on periodic publication. So as and when you finish each objective, you try to publish the results as well. Okay, so I think I have done little bit of justification at least to the bottle up approach in research. So as I mentioned earlier, each of the step is a lifetime lesson. Okay, so it is too less time to explain all these steps in this little time. So I hope I did my best. Now coming to teaching and research, why it should go together. Now, as you know, the number of affiliated colleges have grown over years, and we have strict competition. So now, if you see any advertisement for teaching positions, even in state of Kerala, they ask for teachers with PhD, with good publications, with research funds. So such teachers are always on demand. So you should always understand that, and you have to work accordingly. So only if you have PhD, you will automatically have few publications, and if you have publications, you will always have a better chance of getting funds. And always teaching should go simultaneously with research. So so you can as a postgraduate teacher, if you are a teacher with an MTech degree also, you can make your students do a little good set of good experiments, which can go into conferences, which can go into at least some Scopus Indus publications, etc. So always, you need not be a PhD to do research. If you are a postgraduate, if you are a teacher with a postgraduate degree, then also you can simultaneously pursue teaching and research together. And you can also, and you have to pursue both these together. And why you should pursue research along with teaching is that, for instance, I had recently applied for a funding for an award, and then they had asked me what all subjects I taught, what is my results, how good was I in teaching, and the next set of questions were, how good are you in research, whether you have any research funds. Now, why is it important to have research funds? When you have research funds, when you have money to do your research, so if you need to have money, you should have good publications during your PhD program, or even during your MTech program. And if you have money to do research from central and state government agencies, you can always have a lot of advantages. For instance, you can have money to do research in the area that you like. So you can buy equipments, and you can have your own lab facilities. You can fund students, you can have good publications, because to go for a publication, they would also always like people who have worked on funded projects. Okay, and it will add to your academic prestige. People with projects are always treated a step apart from people who don't have projects. And then you have benefits to your institution wherein you're working also. Okay, now, as a teacher, I said you should have good publications, and you should have good funds to do research. And to get a good fund to do research, you should have a goal-oriented research profile. Say, for I mentioned that I work in nanotechnology. So I have been working in nanotechnology since 2012, and even now I have been working in nanotechnology. So it is a specific area that I work. At least now I am working in a specific area. I am recognized in that area, and automatically I have good publications in that area. And then you also make sure you have a lot of partnering. In this regard, I'm very happy I could associate with Christ College. For it is a means of networking. Now I know the people here in Christ College. I know the so similarly, you use all opportunities to have a good set of network, to have a collaborative research approach. You have to contact other people. You have to get in touch with them, so that you get opportunities at your doorstep. So if you ensure all this for at least 1 year, you can apply for a fund in the next year. Now we have mentioned almost everything about research. Now it is a Herculean task. So, but remember, it, it's a cloud, but it has a silver lining. Now, in my experience, my PhD was the hardest journey which I had ever undertaken. It was the toughest period in my life. But then after PhD, I didn't have to look back. Now, presently, I have a Government of India funded project of 50 lakhs. We have applied for other projects for around 30 lakhs. I have a KTU CERT project. Now, I have set up my own lab based on the funds which I've got. And as mentioned in the introduction, I had received DSC Young Scientist grant, and I have active collaborations with the National University of Ireland, with the university in Vietnam, etc. So all this is because of the hard work and the smart work and the toil during PhD. So I mentioned I didn't have any publications till PhD. So it was all the efforts during the PhD which has capacitated me to be a good writer, technical writer, to be a good researcher. Okay, so your PhD period is very important. You cannot afford to be any lenient in during those 3 or 4 years, or say 5 years. You have to work the midnight oil, and definitely it is worth the effort. So this is a glimpse of my lab and my students. So I take a lot of pride in saying my lab because it is definitely a dream come true. Okay, so that is all about my first part of my presentation. So that about research, how, why, and what of research, and why it is worth. Okay. Now, just of the PhD process at KTU. Now, for the PhD process, for anybody who's planning to pursue a PhD at KTU, the Kerala Technological University, the first thing you should do is read the research regulation. So, research regulation is an 11-page document. It is for supervisors and scholars. So, all of you should read the research regulations. Now, if you read the research regulations, you will understand that for a PhD program in KTU, there are around 18 steps to do a PhD program in KTU. So first one, so I'll just discuss in a quick manner. So the first one is the entrance exam. So KTU announces for an entrance exam in the even semester. So in the even semester, the selection process happens. That is, firstly, you have an entrance exam. Then if you clear the entrance exams, which are quite tough, and you go for the interview. So if you clear the interview, you are admitted. So your admission happens in the odd semester, and in the odd semester, you have the fee payment, which I mentioned, the fee payment in the institute. You have all the records verified, and you would have selected a place of research. So you will be directed to the place of research for admission. And then the third step, you will be allotted to a guide whom you can request. So you can request for a guide, and then the guide should approve. The principal of the place of research should approve, and the dean research should approve. So you have to go for the guide allotment, and then after that, as I mentioned, there is a doctoral committee which is formed in the institute where you have opted to be the place of research. So in the doctoral committee, you have the principal of the institute who is the convener. Then you have a chairman of the doctoral committee who is selected by the university. Then you have other members. So in the members, you have the guide there as a permanent member. Then you have 2 external members from other colleges and 2 internal members from the same college. So the doctoral committee will be formed. Now after that, a series of doctoral committee meetings happen. Now the first doctoral committee meeting happens during which the committee approves your research area. So there will be a brief research area, and the committee approves which all courses you have to take for your research. For instance, you have to take courses for minimum 8 credits and maximum 16 credits. So as per the new regulations, they have added a new course also as per the UGC recommendations. And then So in the after the first DC meeting, after the first doctoral committee meeting, after all the coursework has been approved, you carry out the coursework. Okay, in the coursework, so you can say it takes around 3 semesters or 2 semesters. So I would recommend not more than 2 semesters for the coursework. And after the coursework, we have another beside the syllabus for the comprehensive examination. Examination happens based on the coursework which you have studied. So the panel set by the doctoral committee can ask anything about the coursework that you've studied. So you have to pass the comprehensive written exam and the viva, and then after that the next DC happens, during which you give your proposal. So during the proposal seminar, you have to be you should have more details about your research area. And after the proposal seminar, I think in every year you have every consecutive semester also, as and when you have research progress, you give research progress seminars. And finally, when you have the output, when you have got the enough research output, that is one paper other than review paper in an SCI index journal, and then you can submit your synopsis. So the synopsis will be accepted, then you can submit the thesis, and the thesis will be evaluated, and then you go for the final viva voce, and then finally you get there, that is PhD from KT. So this is a brief about the 18 steps which happen for a scholar registered under KT. So now coming to my last slide. So research is a game of Jenga. So in Jenga, what you do is you arrange the tiles in the best balanced fashion so that it doesn't fall. So research is definitely the systematic, bottom up, realistic approach. So I say systematic because you have to arrange all these blocks. So the blocks include you, your guide, your place of research, the idea, the literature review, the research progress, funds, publications, and finally the successful PhD. So all these blocks should be arranged properly in a systematic manner, that it should be bottom up. So bottom up means from the simplest step you start, and then so you start from you and then you reach your PhD. So it is a bottom up technique, and it is also realistic. It should be realistic. It is always good to be ambitious, but in PhD, it's the realistic aspects outweighs the ambition aspects. So it should be realistic. So to sum up, research should be systematic, bottom up, and realistic. So with this, I have completed my presentation. So thank you organizers. So over to any questions from the participants. Hello, am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, it is audible. I think it was crystal clear. That's why no one is asking question.
Okay.
Everything was crystal
Okay.
clear, and
Okay.
you completed within 1 hour itself. Thank you, ma'am. Okay. Any
Okay.
queries?
Okay.
I think queries are coming. Yeah, the session was very informative and very precise. Everything was clear, ma'am.
Thank you. Okay, okay, thank you. So, I think I'll leave my email ID with the organizers. So, if you have any queries, especially regarding the KTU PhD process, any help you need, you can always contact me. I'm also learning only with my research scholar, so anything can be asked. So, I think Aishwarya has asked me a question a bit on smart work. Yeah. So, smart work actually is actually I would explain in my perspective. So what you do is you see hard work should be before the hard work, smart work comes. So for smart work, your homework is are the research papers. So you should read good quality research papers. So in the first session, I heard Madhu sir telling how to decide on a good research paper. So a good research paper you read, see what they have done. So plan accordingly and do a smart planning of your objectives. Okay. And when I started my PhD, I remember I had this whole chart work in which I had written down my objectives, and for each objective I had written down how many papers which I would get. So that is the planning which you have to do. And now then you plan your paperwork accordingly. So for each objective, every 6 months I used to keep writing. And for that, the smart work which I used to do is I used to refer papers and see what recent researchers had done, and I used to do only those aspects but in my area. So that's the good smart work which you have to do, and always remember it's your work. So you don't have to consult on anybody, you don't have to see how other scholars in your batch are running. Just run your race. So smart work is important. I think smart work can be better um, practicalized than explained. So you will learn it, but papers are your best guides for smart work. So that is what I would say. So I think for somebody with GATE scores, there is a relaxation in KTU. So I'll have to just check once more. So I think I'll get back to you with the proper clarification for that. So is there any importance in selection of college if you're doing PhD under KTU? So college is not a big factor. Your guide is definitely a factor. So automatically, if your guide selection is good, college and the favorable atmosphere in college will definitely come in line. So basically, you have to see whether you have the facilities in your college or at least in nearby colleges to work in the area in which you have proposed to work. So that is one thing. At least nearby colleges you should have the facilities, and your guide should have enough contacts so that you can go work there. So that is the only suggestion. Otherwise, there is no criteria for selection of college if we are doing PhD under KT. Okay, so I think I took more time also. There is any demerits for a part-time PhD over full-time course? So personally, I would suggest a full-time PhD because that is when you work in and out of the PhD. Because I think I've heard one professor saying teaching and research, it's very difficult to uh, carry out both together. So if it's a full-time research, you can do complete justice to your the research which you're doing. So I think I would suggest full time over part time, but then depends on your situation. I have my scholar working under me part time scholar, but she has just completed her coursework. But whenever necessary, she stays in the hostel. She writes review papers. So if you have a will, there is a way. So, but anyway, full time is definitely better than part time.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Shall we conclude the session?
Okay, I'll just leave my email ID in the chat box. If anybody has any query, you can contact me. So I've just left my email ID. So if you have any more doubts, you can contact me. One second, Mr. Anil has asked me a query. It's best to read hard copy or journals rather than soft copy. Can you suggest if it is preferred more than using Mendeley or related things? So I use Mendeley for only referencing stuff. So otherwise, I I depend on Google Scholar mostly, and I refer only good journals. For instance, Elsevier. I'm talking with respect to biotechnology perspective. Elsevier, Springer, Taylor and Francis, etc. And then I collect those papers and then take a printout. And this arrangement is the big part in that. So it is only the systematic approach. Otherwise, there's a lot of planning which goes behind it.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there anyone left to clarify the queries?
Or something about thesis preparation. So, thesis preparation is a cakewalk if you have published all the results before. So, what you do is you set your objectives, and then for each objective, you plan work in such a way that for each objective, you have a paper published. So, then by the time you write your thesis, you will just have to compile all those papers, including your literature survey. So, your literature survey can be published as a good quality review work. So, what I would recommend is, as and when you're doing coursework, you have a thorough literature survey and you try to publish a review article. So then your thesis chapter titled Review of Literature is done. You don't have to worry anything else. So for each objective, for each chapter, and for example, have papers. You plan in such a way. Introduction and review of literature, have a review paper published. For each objective, have ample results and have research papers published. And then by the time you come to your thesis, it will be just compilation of all this and then submission. So it is easier for thesis preparation if papers are readily published. Otherwise, it is little difficult, but I think morning Ramya ma'am gave an idea about writing thesis in LaTeX. And I'm a bio person, so I use Word only, Microsoft Word. But then I use this referencing tools like Mendeley, Zotero, etc., which I find very handy for reference management. How much of the thesis chapter can overlap with published papers? Actually, it's not complete, just the paper as such. You'll have to add more to it when it comes to the thesis, but then the plagiarism part can be always justified when you say that it is from your own paper. So this overlapping it is justifiable, but your thesis will definitely have more content than your paper. So when you have a paper, it's easy to have a skeleton for your thesis. And I think I answered that. Synopsis is a brief. It's say, for example, 10 pages report of your thesis. So synopsis will give the external an idea of what the whole work is about. So it's not as big as the thesis. So thesis can go up to 1,000 pages also, but I would prefer a shorter thesis. My thesis was just 250 pages, I think. So because that's how my guide wanted it. But synopsis is roughly 10 pages. So it's very crisp, precise. It should tell the external what your thesis is all about, including the results. Okay, funded projects. I had conducted a webinar just on funded projects. So for funded projects, you should have publications in that area. So to have a funded project, you should have at least 6 months of homework, wherein you work on a particular area, have some papers in that area, and then you apply for funding. So there are, ma'am, it's actually more than an hour session to have to talk on funded projects. But for funded projects also, you should have a good writing skills, and whenever possible, you try to convert all your experimental work into papers, so it will be easier. So Sridevi ma'am, I can share my expertise, whatever I know on funded projects. If you could leave me an email, ma'am, I'll give you a more elaborate answer, ma'am.
Ma'am, there's a query from Minu Lalita Madhav.
No, ma'am. How long will it take after pre-synopsis submission for thesis evaluation? Actually, ma'am, the document which you submit is called synopsis, and the presentation that you give is called pre-synopsis. So, before submitting your synopsis, you give the pre-synopsis presentation, and the pre-synopsis presentation will be evaluated by the experts, and they say, okay, you can submit your synopsis. Then you submit the 10-page synopsis to the university or the college, and they send it for evaluation to a panel which includes international experts and national experts. So you should correlate the amount of time required, because it will be totally unknown people. To them you have to send it, they have to read it, and they have to accept that, okay, I will evaluate the thesis. So it would take some time, say 3 months. If you're lucky enough, it can even happen in 1 month. So in all these places, the expertise of the guide would play a big role, because if it is sent to people whom your guide knows, then they can always have a better communication. But in all these cases, a guide selection matters a lot. So just that you have to be careful. But I think if you're lucky enough, it happens in a month, but it can even go up to 5 or 6 months also for a synopsis confirmation, and then followed by a thesis evaluation.
Thank you, ma'am. I hope all the queries are being cleared.